We don't heal in isolation, but in community. S. Kelly Harrell. The Dragon Pod from Bending Not Breaking. Book 4, Earth. Chapter 1, Rebirthday. Welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. This is the first episode of officially what we are calling the Dragon Pod, which is what we're focusing all of our Dragon Prince energy into, which is really exciting because we are all thrilled that season 4 is here. Season 5 is coming. But before that, we have a chance to watch and rewatch this season because there's so much joy and so much information that happened in this that came out. So I'm just cannot wait to dive into this season with all of our special guests. And today is no exception. All right, everyone, you may have seen on Twitter that we are recording today with Jesse Inocalla. Uses he, his pronouns. He is a Filipino-American voiceover artist, actor, producer with over a decade of experience in the entertainment industry, currently based in Vancouver, British Columbia. He is one of the leads on the hit Emmy-nominated Netflix series, The Dragon Prince, which is why you're all here today, I assume. Also the voice of Marvel's Spider-Ham on Marvel Battle World, and has voiced numerous characters for producers like Nintendo, Hasbro, Capcom, Sega, IGG, My Dearest, and many more. Kind of a big deal. Jesse is back with us on the podcast. Jesse, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me back, man. I'm excited to be here.
I mean, I am so like I was cultivating the guest list for this season like months and months ago. As soon as
I remember, and I kept blanking out on your emails.
Oh, no worries, no worries at all. Like, but it was one of those things where, like, as people continued to say yes, I was just like floored with gratitude of how much, like, what an incredible group of people that are working on this. There's so much generosity from everyone who I've been able to speak with. And so I'm grateful for the whole cast. And I'm especially grateful for you for being first because it was a quick turnaround once the episodes dropped. So thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, for those of us who are listening and have not heard previous episodes of the podcast, so they don't know you super well, and perhaps they haven't seen you elsewhere, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about what makes you you?
Okay, sure. Well, as you said, Jesse Inocalla. I've been working in the entertainment industry for most of my life at this point. I've been a professional, that is to say, paying my bills off of a voice actor for the past, God, decade or something. I did the math recently and it made me feel real old. So I'm just going with decade. Yeah, I was super fortunate to, I still am super fortunate to work on Dragon Prince. I mean, I did the math on this one and it blew me away. I've been living with Soren and being him for almost 6 years now,
Oh, wow.
which is,
Oof.
man. Vilas, who's our showrunner now, he posted a picture on his Instagram of the very first table read we all had.
Yeah.
And it was in 2017. Like, that's when I first met Paula. That's when I first met Luke. That's like, I had already known Rack and Jason kind of from other circles, but man, to think it's been that long that I've had this beautiful dummy kicking around in my head. It's been really lovely. Um, Beyond that, I mean, I do a lot of work in video games. I just had a rather large game launch in Japan called Dyschronia,
Mm.
which is a VR detective adventure novel, basically,
Hmm.
where you play as me, Hal, the protagonist, who has to solve a murder in a city that has not experienced crime in a great number of years anyway.
Interesting.
It's very cool. It's super interactive. I don't do VR very well. I get vertigo easily, so I'm waiting on
Oh,
the Nintendo Switch
yikes.
release.
Yeah.
But it's super cool. It's a cool concept, and I always have more stuff dropping. I was just able to talk about Borderlands. I'm in the new Tales from the Borderlands, which is dope. I'm so excited to be a part of that universe.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, Dragon Prince is such a big part of my life right now, and I
Especially right now.
oh God, especially we just had the season at the time of recording right now. We've just had the season drop last week, and it's been incredible to see the community come out of collective hibernation.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always, the small, what, like 20, maybe 30 people who are just like active hive mind
Oh
on
yeah, they just keep going. You
and
can't
they just
stop
never
them.
stop. Right. And then there's the larger community that there was this like out of hibernation, like over the past week, you've seen more and more people starting to post on social media about it. It's been really cool to witness that.
And to see
Oh,
the people who are like brand new to the show,
yeah. Yeah,
who are
absolutely.
coming in and kind of witnessing it all at once, which is extra crazy to me. And the people who came from Tales of Zadia or from the comics, or
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I forget about that.
me too. And it's huge.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So season 4,
Mm.
taking the world by storm. Um, I'm curious. We've kind of heard a little bit about your relationship with your work. What is something that's happening in your life that is completely unattached to work that you really love to do?
Oh God. Wow. I don't know, man. It's been nice that, my partner got a new job recently, so it's been nice to have her home more often so we can just
Mm,
have more like family time together.
yeah.
Um, it's been nice to learn to take time for myself. With restrictions, COVID restrictions lifting in Canada, I've been going back to the gym more often, which has been really lovely.
Yeah.
I've been taking a lot of time to get out and not necessarily get out, but socialize anyway with people I haven't spoken to in years, which has been really good for my mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. I am. It's amazing how much I adapted over the COVID restriction period to not going out at all and not going to the gym and not doing these things. And
Yeah.
then it's like having to relearn how to, like, I have to build those habits from scratch
Oh
almost.
yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
I have
Fascinating.
a couple $100 worth of like dumbbells and weighted clubs in my house that I was using over the lockdown periods. And man, if they aren't just collecting dust and have been for like
Yeah.
a couple months now, just because it's hard to get that motivation up, right?
Yeah. I totally hear you. Oh, it's, oh, I want, like, it's this cognitive dissonance that I'm sure many people can relate to, of like, I want this, but I don't want to do it. Like, I
Absolutely,
want to
yeah.
get this, but I want the benefits of this, but
Yes, but I
uh,
want nothing to do with it with regards to actually going there.
yeah.
Totally.
Mm. Well, yeehaw, we did it.
We did it.
Yeah.
Here we
Well,
are.
here we are. We've made it to today at least. We have shown that we have the endurance to at least make it to this point in time. And I'm going to kind of push us into this next segment. And it's
Please.
a new segment for the podcast since our guests this season are pretty epic. Um, we're going to be doing a segment called The Primal Source. Get it? And the Primal
Like the
Source is
show.
where, yeah, right. Yeah. Um, Essentially, we are really grateful to have so many people that have firsthand knowledge about the making of these episodes, that were involved in that process. And so this is a chance for us to kind of just pick your brain and say, hey, what's something fun that happened in the making of this episode? Or what's something that struck you about the making of this episode, whether it be surprising or
Hmm.
interesting, whatever comes to mind.
I mean, I in a way I'm very lucky that I chose this episode, because the biggest thing coming back to this was we were all just so excited to get back to it. You know,
Yeah.
we had no idea what was going to happen kind of in the interim between 3 and 4 being announced. So, I remember at the online New York Comic Con panel in, I want to say, 2020. Aaron had me there. Eric, who's Eros, was there. Rena, Janai, of course, the usual cast of characters were
Yeah.
all there. And, we were all just kind of here to like talk about the show. And we're like, why are all of us here? And then midway through the panel, Aaron's like, and we got renewed for seasons 4 through 7. And
Yeah.
there is a legit moment in that panel where you see all of us just go, what?
Whoa.
Because Aaron, bless his soul, I love him so much. He loves to surprise us, and he loves to like throw fun little wrenches at us like that.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I remember watching the video of your
yeah.
reaction. I was surprised that y'all were as surprised as we were. And it
Oh
was just
God, yeah.
what a cool
It
experience.
felt like beating an Elden Ring boss, man. I was
Yeah.
just like, what? We did what?
Yeah.
And we had been eagerly, anxiously awaiting those scripts and for them to come back. And as soon as I got it back, it just felt like stepping back into a comfortable pair of shoes, man. It felt like stepping back into a world that I had been eagerly waiting to jump back into. And I knew there was a time skip. Um, I hadn't yet read the graphic novels by the time we got to here, because we did this in, God, 2 years ago. We did
Yeah.
this in 2020. And I was so happy to be back in studio. I
Yeah.
was so happy. We didn't get a chance to like record with each other yet, of course, because we were still doing a lot of very, very advanced sanitation measures for studios. So
Mhm.
only recently have I been back in studio recording with people, and even then to a very limited extent. But every so often we would get to Skype in with each other, or there's I don't know if you have Jack on this season, but Jack and I have an ongoing bit with our Walla that I don't know made it in at any point. I certainly didn't in 4, where we play a father and son asking questions about what's happening in the scene. Just like Walla is with all actors. So that's, the crowd hustle you'll hear, or the,
Yeah.
oh, what's going on? All that, right?
Uh-huh.
So Jack and I had an ongoing bit where I was like, Papa, what's the dragon saying? Not now, Michael. This is work. And
Yeah.
I'm sure none of it made it in, and you probably can't even hear for it. But it was just so fun to be able to see everybody again,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, there's just so many cool things that I'm kind of processing this idea of what it would feel like from your perspective to have recorded season 4 and then not being able to kind of share that with the world for so long, right? It's like this uh like I've done this really cool thing and I can't see it. I just imagine that's what a how did that feel? I'm curious because
I mean, as an actor, I that's something I do a lot.
yeah.
We're all under NDAs for everything we do, basically. And
Mhm.
I've got a couple that I'm sitting on right now. And like with Borderlands is a great example, because
Yeah.
while I'm a supporting character in that, we did that in late 2020 into early 2021. And I couldn't say anything about it. And I had no desire to, really, because I like working with
Yeah,
Gearbox.
yeah, yeah.
But the leads on that one, that was a full-time job for them.
Mm,
They were in studio 5 days a week from, 9 to 3 or 4 usually per day, doing all
wow.
their mocap for it. And they couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for performers to be in a place where We've got a lot to say and no one to say it to,
Yeah.
and it's best that way.
Yeah. So, did you all ever just commiserate? I am sure that you did, like commiserate together with the
Oh,
people.
we have group chats, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. Just like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah, we got group chats. I mean, that to say, like we knew season 4 was coming when Aaron said season 4 was coming at
Yeah.
New York, right? So once once that was public, we can say, oh, well, we're season 4 is coming, and that's all we can say.
Yep. Yep.
And certainly that's typically all I care to say
Yeah.
until we can actually talk about it.
Yeah. And now we can. So,
Now we can. Now it's
yeah.
here.
Well, awesome. I can't wait. We should dive in. So, you've heard it, everyone. This is the Primal Source. And now we're going to move into kind of our episode discussion. But before we do that, we have to unpack the lens that we're going to be viewing this episode through. So, today we kind of collaborated and landed on the lens of community. And we're viewing this episode through that lens. And so, Jesse, I'm curious, just from your perspective, can you help us understand what community means to you?
Sure, sure. I have and still continue to spend a lot of my life as an island. I'm very reserved. I don't like to reach out more than absolutely necessary. And as I'm in my late 30s now, I'm coming to realize how much of a mistake that's been throughout so much of my life. Um, I I rely more over 2020, over the lockdown portions of the pandemic. This is a fantastic example. I really made it through and found advancement through connecting with the community of Filipino performers that I work
Mhm.
with, and that I know them all. I love them all out of Los Angeles, and they brought me in remotely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And through meeting them and working with them, I not only found a really beautiful community to commiserate with and to laugh with and to talk with, but
Yeah.
also one that's helped me advance my career.
Mm.
And, you know, coming back, kind of like I was saying, I throughout 2019 and early 2020, when I was doing a lot of traveling for season 3, we had such a really tight-knit community. Me, Adrian, Jason, Raquel, Paula, because we were, and Sasha, of course, but Sasha's a child, so she wasn't coming out drinking with us
Yeah.
afterwards. We found a really lovely, family that we traveled with.
Uh,
And
oh,
coming into 2020, when, of course, COVID, and rightly so, every fucking convention shuttered, and they should have, and probably should continue to be as
yeah, like, ugh.
stringent as they are. Um, I found myself very solitary all of a sudden.
Mm.
And coming back to the show, and kind of like I was saying before, that it just felt like, stepping into a nice pair of shoes. Stepping back into recording the show and knowing that we had this, and having Ben Callens, who is just brilliant, come in. He and I have been talking for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Just in anticipation of what's coming. And that is to say, season 4. Um, it's just been really lovely to rediscover that sense of community with
Mm.
my friends and colleagues on this show.
Yeah.
Because as I'm sure you've heard from probably at least Jason,
Yeah.
this show is very unique,
Yeah.
especially for Vancouver, and I think just kind of in general.
I agree. I mean, just watching it, it's pretty evident. Like, it's self-evident that it is unique, and it's just a really beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing a few elements of community from you.
Sure.
I'm hearing one, that community is not necessarily bound by um, proximity, right? So I
No,
heard
yeah.
that you, even in Vancouver, were able to establish community with those in Los Angeles. And I'm also hearing that the loss of community was not a healthy feeling for you. Like that loss was not good. But then in following that, I guess, when you were able to kind of re-encounter that community, that it was a sense, there was a sense of this is rightness almost. Did I capture that well? What did I miss?
Um, yeah, I feel what you're saying. I think that I agree. I don't think community is bound by proximity. I don't think community is bound by blood. I don't think community is bound by anything except the choices we make for ourselves and the people within, right? Um, and I think that, you know, especially it's so funny. I was reading an article on this yesterday on how blockbuster movies have become entirely sexless. And something they brought up that I thought was interesting is that so much of modern marketing is based around the concept of self-reliance
Yeah.
and self-improvement and self-growth and self,
Yep.
which I get, I understand. You know, we all live under the dystopian nightmare that is late stage death knell capitalism.
Yep.
But at the same time, you know, we're missing community.
Yeah.
I think we
Absolutely.
all are, you know, the more and more I think about it. And to have that space, whatever that space is for people, if it's a Discord server, if it's a TTRPG night, if
Yeah.
it's trivia night with the boys, if it's whatever it is, if it's a fantasy football league, for Christ's sake, that can be such an incredibly powerful support network,
Yeah.
not even just for, you know, personal growth or personal advancement, but just to have like-minded individuals around.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things I'm hearing there, it seems as though community, wherever and however it is created, is a source, is a space where one feels like they belong.
Yes.
Right. So it's this element of belonging, right? And
Mhm.
we know that we are neurobiologically wired to belong
Belong.
to this,
Yeah.
right? We're social, like human beings are a social species,
Mhm.
right? Like it's ridiculous to say that we are individuals. We are a collective, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is what is exactly what you're pointing to is this it is a function of being in a capitalist society that we are being indoctrinated into seeing how we uh, work and live and integrate with other people through a how can I be as independent and self-reliant as possible, which
Mhm.
creates this almost shame around asking for help. It
Mhm.
creates this shame around needing to support from other people.
Mhm.
And what I've learned recently is like the beauty that comes from community around like mutual aid and
Mhm.
thinking about how every time that has happened, it's usually been stomped on by the government in
Yeah. The
some shape or
government.
form,
Yes.
right? And it's just really interesting to think about how much good comes from community like this. So
Mhm.
with kind of this lens in mind, we're gonna think about this episode. And for those of us that did not watch it today or did not watch it, as recently as we would have liked, this,
Watch it again. Why not?
yeah, it's maybe you should just watch it again and that'll solve the
Netflix
problem.
loves numbers.
But we're going to be kind to our listeners and we're going to give you all a recap in 30 seconds. And so I'm going to invite uh, Jesse. Would you like to go first or would you like to go second?
Ooh. I'll
This is
go
done,
first.
right?
I'll
Yeah.
go first. Yeah,
Awesome.
let's get this out of the way.
All right. So, everyone, Jesse has 30 seconds to recap the entire episode,
Okay.
and you can start in three, two, one.
Okay, so it is 2 years after the Battle at the Storm Spire. Big reveal. Callum is now the High Mage. Ezrin is now the King. Rayla, nowhere to be seen. Who's Rayla? No one knows. No one cares. We have Viren and Claudia. Viren has been dead. Claudia brings him back to life, realizes it's only going to last for about 30 days, so they need to go on a quest to find Erebos. Also, Terry's there. Terry's lovely. He's a cinnamon roll. It is Callum's birthday on this episode, so
And
there's this
that's
big
time.
there it is. There it is. Oh man.
So
Could have
close.
talked faster.
So
I got
close.
like halfway through. You go for it.
It's tough, right?
It's tough. It's so tough.
All right. If you will count me in.
Yeah. You want me to time you as well?
I got it.
Okay. And we'll go in 3, 2, and go.
So 2 years have passed. Oh my gosh. And then Viren's alive. He's alive after that fall. Are we kidding? Callum's better at magic, is a little umbrella thing. Ezrin has this council meeting, and Opeli is like trying to get stuff done, but then like Bait shows up and it's the whole deal. And then Barius is like the lord of crusts and jellies or something. And then Callum thinks something's up. It's really kind of worried about everything and talking behind his back. And then Janiyah and Maya have a secret mission, and it's really pretty. And then it's Callum's birthday, and it's really sad birthday because it's like, where's Rayla? And that's time. Okay. Well,
you got further than I did.
Yeah, but I also skipped a lot of things that you didn't.
That's fair.
It's with our powers combined that we were able to capture what we did.
It's almost like that's the story.
It's almost like we planned it because it's part of doing things in community. All right. So we kind of watched this episode with community in mind. And so I'm going to toss it straight to you. What is a moment in this episode that really kind of bubbled to the surface when you were watching through this lens?
I think the first thing that kind of bubbled to my mind, outside of the birthday party, which I just think is fucking adorable, is seeing what is now regular life in Catullus again.
Yeah.
Seeing little Callum in Viren's lab, study, whatever.
Yeah.
Seeing him interact with the guards, seeing how the guards interact with him, how he's still not completely comfortable, with high mage or whatever. Seeing little Crowmaster pop up and he got a promotion. Good for him.
Right. Associate Crow Lord.
It's such a small moment, but it's one of my favorite moments in the entire episode when he's like, when Associate Crowlord is like, actually, I'm Associate Crowlord now, and he's talking to somebody at the birthday party, and she just walks away.
She just rolls her eyes and walks away.
Done.
Yeah,
it's such a tiny moment, but I love it. It's so good.
And I have questions about that actually. So let's zoom in on that micro moment because I thought it was really fascinating. So I have a story that I'm telling myself about Associate Crowlord.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to fact check / make sure that I'm not being not generous, right?
I'll do my best. I don't know him as well as Cole does, but I'll do my best.
So here's my thought. It seems as though he is very proud to have this new role, right? Mm-hmm. He's been promoted. He is really excited and sharing it with anyone who will listen. And that's the vibe that we're getting. Mm-hmm. And shares it with Callum, and Callum's like, cool, but like the book. And so he's trying to get to his point. And then I wonder if this woman who walks away from him is just like, I've heard him say this 100 times. And he didn't even know I heard him in the conversation over there. And I was trying to come and have a different conversation. He just is like saying it again, and I can't deal with it. So my impression is that that's what's going on. But there's also other possibilities. I'm curious if that's what's going on in your head too, or if there are other possibilities that you're thinking about.
I love Cole Howard. He's such a lovely man, and he plays Associate Crowlord so well. Still credited as Crowmaster. So in my head, he got demoted shortly afterwards. I think what is going on there is, and this is a very Cole Howard thing, bless you, Cole, I know you're listening, is he gets really, really excited. Okay. And he's kind of like a golden retriever sometimes, where he's just so excited to talk about, whatever it is he's going through or whatever's going on. And it just dominates the conversation because he's so excited. And it's infectious. The excitement is truly infectious. And I think that part of my dear friend Cole Howard has bled into Associate Crow Lord a little bit, where he's just like the sweetest, nicest, most most excited person in the world. And if I had an ounce of his energy about anything in my life, I would probably be in a very different place.
Yeah, I would be okay with having more energy in my life, I will admit.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think that we all know someone like this, that it comes across almost as self-centered, right? In a way that I can't see anybody else because I'm so like excited about this thing that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, part of me is also wondering, like, this seems like a really important deal. And so how do I be more generous when situations like this come up? How do I stay in community with someone
Yeah,
who is this excited about their promotion, right? Because I want to not be the person that walks away,
of course.
right?
I think, I mean, for me at least, it's just learning to celebrate those little things, right?
Yeah.
What may not be a
Yeah.
huge deal to me is a huge deal to someone else. I think about this all the time when I interact with voiceover Twitter,
Mm.
where, I'll see people who uh they, or one of my students, actually this is a better example. One of my students at on the mic training where I was teaching there full time booked a phone tree.
Hmm.
So, you call AT&T or whatever, and it's just like, hello, welcome to AT&T, blah, 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 right? It's a real simple, no nonsense job.
Yeah.
And it's, maybe, I mean, they booked it off of Fiverr or something, so it's probably 50, $60. But that's a huge deal to them. That's their first booking,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And what I need to do, and what I've been attempting to do more and more, is take off my jaded glasses
Yeah. I have those. I totally know what that's
for
like.
real, right? And just be like, you know what? No, that is actually really cool.
Yeah.
That's incredible, And because it
Yeah.
truly is, my own jadedness is something that I've been trying to entertain less and less
Yeah.
as I've been trying to focus more and more on not only my own community, but in building communities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It what I'm hearing, I think, is that in those moments, in order to continue to build, right? In order to
Mhm.
build that community, it's important to listen and respond appropriately to the bid that was made.
Mhm.
And I think when I repeat things, I repeat it because I don't think I've been heard,
Yes.
right? And so this repetition, I'm wondering if he doesn't feel like he's being appropriately recognized, right? And I wonder if he feels like he hasn't quite been seen for the as much as he sees it to be,
Mm.
right? And so like that's why I repeat things. I wonder if he's repeating it for the same reason, and all it would take to make it so that he didn't repeat it is for doing what you just said, which is to say, "Wow, that's a big deal.
Hmm.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with me." Right? Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
I just I
It's
think
the
that
give and take of conversation,
yeah.
Like it coming from a performance background, sometimes we always think it has to be like an improv yes and, right? It has to be
Hmm.
a yes and this, or yes and this, or no but this, like always building, 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 right? But it can be as simple as a that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I know I forget all the time, is just allowing things to be as they are instead of feeling the need to build on top of it. And, speaking to this specific moment in time with dear sweet associate Crowlord, I mean, the promotion may not be a big deal,
Yeah.
truly. I mean, I don't know how many people have associate in their title.
I mean, actually, I know a few.
Oh, well, of course, grad student, you would. Um, but it's not always like the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes you tack associate on just so someone feels recognized, right?
Yep.
And that, who knows, that might be the case here. I'm not well versed in the infrastructure of Catullus, as interesting as I'm sure it
Right.
would be.
Right. I'm ready for the class.
But yeah, it's offered at Catullus University,
Oh man.
city building.
Yeah.
It's next to the baking lab.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a moment that is very cute and very sweet, and I think really speaks to the inherent cute and sweetness of this character,
Yeah.
but also to, he's trying to reach out, and I get that.
Yeah.
And Callum is kind of off in his own world, as Callum tends to be, as we might see throughout the season.
Yeah. We might.
Who knows? And yeah, I think it's a fun little moment that bears a thought, both in terms of like the cleverness of the writing, but also just in the ongoing trials and tribulations of being the associate Crow Lord of Catullus.
Indeed. Yeah. So I want to return kind of to what you
Please.
said first. You mentioned also getting a chance to see what this community looks like. And again,
Hmm.
this community that is now situated 2 years after war.
Yeah.
And I think I had a surprise thought, like, oh, it's raining. Why are people outside? Why are there so many people who are outside right now? And I was like, there were children playing in the rain, and there were people who were unbothered by the rain, seemingly. They were just kind of standing outside and just letting it happen. And I was like, I want that. I want to be unbothered by the rain. Like, this seems like a really cool community to be a part of, where people don't really care about, okay, well, I get wet, I'll just dry off. Like, it just seemed really interesting for me to,
Yeah.
Callum aside, who has this
Well,
magical umbrella,
that's pretty
but
cool.
which is like, I kind of wish I had that too. That'd be super neat. But I thought that was really interesting insight into just the, I don't know. I don't know what quality I would say that is, but it's an interesting insight to the community.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in Vancouver. It rains here a lot, or at very least it used to before climate change started to be more and more drastic.
Yikes.
And, when I walk my dog, I don't usually wear a hat or a hood or whatever. I don't need to. I mean, I'm bald. It peels off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But, rain isn't a huge deal, you
Hmm.
know? And I think that in a lot of places, I was in Italy recently. I was earlier this year, I should say, and it rained a fair bit while we were there. And you would see, for the most part, the tourists would be the ones like scrambling to get their umbrellas up
Yeah.
and stay dry, and everyone else is just like hood, whatever,
Yep.
not a big deal. And I think it speaks to, they got other shit to worry about. You know,
Yeah.
rain rain is not so big of a deal that we need to fight it. I mean, nature in general isn't so big of a deal that we must fight it.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question now that's
Yeah.
going towards the council.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Ezrin is kind of marked for us as a very mature for his age ruler,
Hmm.
and has a incredibly kind heart. And that's kind of what we know. And the it's really fascinating to me who makes up this council.
I'm really glad you're hitting on this because this is something I was thinking about as well.
Yeah, so like I'll ask you then, like what strikes you about the makeup of the council?
A lot of it is very young.
Yeah.
Soren is probably, what was he, 18 in the last season, so he's 20 now.
Mm-hmm.
Corvus is probably around there. Callum is 18. Opelli's probably early 30s at latest. I
Mm-hmm.
think Barrius is the oldest member on, well, excluding Bate, Barrius
Yeah.
is the oldest member on the council.
Is
And
Bates
Barrius is working class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barrius, happened to happened into his appointment, which I think is very cool. And I think it goes to show the true wisdom
Yeah.
of King Ezran as written, that he wants to hear perspectives from all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I say this with all due love and respect to my boy, but Soren probably shouldn't be on a ruling council. And yet, here he is.
You know, I probably would agree with you. But after watching this season, I was shocked at how observant Soren was. Soren is very sharp. Like
I've been telling people for years.
he comes off as a dum dum, but like he is very, very keen on the uptake. Even if
Mm-hmm.
even if he comes across as not. Like the things he notices and says later in the seasons or in the episodes of this season, I'm like, dude's been paying attention. He knows exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so like maybe like in terms of what's the oh my god, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Relationality, no crap. Relatability.
Relatability. Yeah.
That's the one. Relatability politics.
Mm.
Where we have to perform a certain way when we're with a group of people in order to be acceptable. And I think what we're seeing is a level of tolerance, not even tolerance, but acceptance and nurturance of different ways of being with people. And the fact that Ezran is saying, "Hey, I know that Soren is valuable here because I've seen what he can do and what he can say, even
Mm-hmm.
though he might disrupt the meeting in weird ways by doing an awkward drum roll." Right? Which I gotta say was probably my favorite Soren moment in this episode.
It's a good moment.
Yeah. But like that's how it feels to me. Like, how does that track for you?
I can get on board with that. I mean, I think something I've been saying since the beginning of the show is that there's a lot more going on to Soren than I think people give him credit for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He is kind of a lovable dummy, and he has this, big himbo energy to him. But he's also the youngest crown guard in history,
Mm-hmm.
which means he has achieved something to get there, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's huge. And on top of that as well, coming into season 4, he is a respected military commander.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the head of the Crown Guard now.
Which again, interesting.
Again,
Right?
which goes to show that, he has a tactical mind. He has a reasonably cunning, and we see that come up throughout the show as well, throughout season 4,
Yeah.
where he has moments of great cunning, even though, they might not be the most orthodox of methods.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's so interesting about this is just the makeup of the council is spanning in ages, not necessarily like every age bracket, but certainly
No.
spanning in age. And I think it's spanning in uh, terms
It's
of,
spanning in class for sure.
yeah, class, absolutely, but also spanning in like Bait is on the council,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think it's an honorary position, right? Because
Ah.
we know that Ezran has the capacity to communicate with Bait, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I legitimately think that what we're seeing is like this almost radical acceptance modeled by Ezran, right?
Mm-hmm.
Around who should be included in this kind of community that he's trying to build in this kingdom,
Yeah.
right? It's fascinating, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think it's such an interesting makeup, and I'm glad that the team did it the way they did, because it makes for very interesting. Uh, I just think it would make for a real interesting conversation at the council meeting.
yeah,
But I also think that it's nice to see that it's not just, for lack of better phrasing, a bunch of old white dudes.
right. Well, and to be fair, it is a bunch of dudes, Sanzo Pelli, right?
Well, yeah, Sansa
And
Pelli.
so like I do think that there's probably a lot of people who will hear this segment as we're talking and be like, what about this? Why don't we have this?
Oh, for sure.
And I think that there could definitely be a larger contingency of women for sure.
Hmm.
But I'm and this is a pretty radical council as
Yeah,
it is,
two
right?
things can be true.
Yes. Yeah. Um, okay. What else? What other moments of community did you notice in this episode?
I mean, one of the big ones I think that kind of comes round is, I mean, to harken back to something I was saying before with regards to, we're seeing Catullus as a community. I think it's really interesting to see if this is a community that has survived war
Yeah.
and has just gone back to living.
That's big.
Yeah. Well, because it's not something that I think you or I are used to, or really anyone of our generation,
Yeah.
you know? Kind of harkening back, bear with me, I do a lot of this reading, but I was thinking about, the US's involvement in its many, many forever wars,
Yep.
and how I feel that so much of our generation and the current generation and previous generations even
Yeah.
are being hit with what Dr. Naomi Klein refers to as shock tactics, where we're just continually shocked into accepting more and more and more and more with
Yeah.
regards to, war or neoliberal policy or acceptance of conservative social norms or that sort of thing, just
Yep.
because we don't have that resistance.
Interesting.
And I really love that, you look at Catullus as a kingdom that is not only not preparing for war anymore,
Yeah.
but is
Yeah.
seeking actively to end them.
Yes.
Ezrin specifically is seeking to create this, and this is a later episode thing, but it bears saying, is seeking to create a dialogue with Zubeia,
Yeah.
who represents one of the oldest, most dangerous, like most contentious enemies that human kingdoms have ever faced, which is
Uh-huh.
Zadia, and who they just fought.
Yeah.
And the fact that that is there, I mean, talk about community,
Mm.
seeking to build that with, a quote unquote former enemy
Yeah.
and not seek war.
Yeah. One of the quotes that has always stuck with me is I heard this originally from Brene Brown, who I think was
Mm.
quoting someone else, but um, a social wound requires a social balm in order to
Mm.
heal.
Yeah, I like that.
And war is a social wound, right? It is not just an isolated thing, right?
No,
It
not
is
at all.
it is very much a communal social thing, and this idea of Ezrin is building this community in such a way that is actively working towards healing the social wound,
Hmm.
right? And by reaching out to Zubeia, this is an intentional act of community building, right? Instead of community destroying, which is exactly that's like let's talk about what war does, right? Like this is
Exactly.
right. It's how are we building community and community through the it's almost as if um looking at the fence of your community and saying how do I get rid of this fence and how do I make it bigger, how do I grow the edge of the community that we're in, right? And
Mm.
that's what Ezra's doing. He's trying to grow that edge to include more. uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and on that note too, with Ezrin, and this comes up in the reflection story, so I can fucking say it all I want
Yeah.
here. Ezrin's crown is made of Harrow's sword.
Yeah, so cool, right?
Wow. Like what a powerful statement
Yeah,
to say,
absolutely.
like, no, I don't need this sword. I
Mm,
will still carry the wisdom of my father as represented by the sword. And Harrow was, for his faults, he was attempting to be a peacemaker.
mm-hmm. Yep.
But man, swords into plowshares, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite magic card. Not really, but it's certainly one of them. Um, wow, there's just so much there. Okay, we haven't talked about the Viren Claudia Terry terms of
Or Amaya and Janai either, which
or
I
Amaya
think
and
is,
Janai. Oh my
I
god.
mean, oh my God, huge.
Okay, Pick one. Where do we want to go first?
Oh God. Let's do Amaya and Janai because I think that'll work into what I've been saying about Zubeya and Ezrin.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like let's do it because what I know about this is that this proposal in and of itself
Mm-hmm.
is a communal ask, right? It's
Oh
not
yeah.
an isolated ask, and it's communal for on multiple fronts. Grin is like inextricably connected to this process, and then
Mm-hmm.
also the fact that Janai has this um, history that she's working in from her
Mm-hmm.
culture that it allows multiple people to join in and create this, what turned out to be a flopped dance. But
Yeah.
um, in generally, though, it's this is a communal ask, and I find that to
Mm-hmm.
be incredibly beautiful.
I think so too. It's gorgeous. And as I was saying, as something you were saying that I think is very interesting, is war as a social wound, right? And Amaya demonstrates that.
Sure does.
Boy, does she. And she would. She has been on the front lines forever,
Yep.
literally forever. She is new to this whole peace thing. And, I man, bless those elves for being as forgiving as they are.
I know. Like that could have been so much worse.
Oh, yeah, totally. And, it speaks to tensions that come up later on in the season, of course. But
Yes.
I think it's really interesting that, Amaya is still in this state of trauma, for lack of better phrasing.
Yeah. No, I definitely buy into that for sure. I think that is ultimately what eh, Maya's actions throughout the season really are there, because there are some things where that she says that I'm like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. And it took me a while to process, to realize like this is like the water she's been swimming in her entire
Hmm.
life, right? This is what she's been trained for. Of course, her first reaction is going to presume that something is wrong, right?
Hmm.
And it offer, like, I think a lot of people probably watch that and be like, who would respond that way, right? Or I think that we have to take on like what people have been doing for their entire lives, right? And maybe that is on Janai a little bit, right? And I don't know that it's like, not to place blame, but I think that Grin also had the capacity to step in, but to be like, I don't know how Amaya's going to respond to this. And I think that it's this consistent communication, or rather lack thereof, regarding understanding the other's culture.
Hmm.
It is the source of so much strife this entire season, right? And we see it starting here, right? This constant, like, if you just learned a little bit more about the culture and had some cultural humility, there would be no arguments. We could avoid all of this. But
Hmm.
how true is that, though, of real life?
That's exact. And again, not to harp on it, but that's something that I respect so much about the show.
Yeah,
Is there is that sense of like, okay, yeah, in an ideal world, this is what might happen, but this world is not ideal.
it's yes. Yeah. And again, I think that's what we learn, right? This idea of building community. We see that love can bridge that, right? And help
Hmm.
make that communication process a little easier. And
Hmm.
we see that love doesn't fix it, right?
No,
Like, love
absolutely
doesn't
not.
solve the problem.
No.
It is communication that seems to
Yeah.
be what's lacking here. And so,
And love requires work, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Boy, does it. I mean, I'm sure you'll get into that on future episodes, but it's something that I think is always very interesting when I see fans being like, "Oh well, why aren't Callum and Rayla together again?" And I'm like, "She left for 2 years, dude.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Left without warning, with just like a letter on the pillow for 2 years."
Yeah,
And this isn't an era where you can just text somebody, right?
yeah,
Like she's gone. She might be dead.
yeah.
Like, yeah, I would have trouble bringing someone back into my life if
Yeah,
they just disappeared for 2 years.
it's a breach of trust, right?
Yeah,
It is hard to, like, again, community is, again, this space where you feel like you belong, and part of belonging is realizing that you can be who you are and say what you
yeah,
feel without fear of being hurt for it. And then
hmm
Rilla leaving kind of left Callum, and like,
yeah.
that it breaks something, right?
It's a social contract.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
social contract with communities where you're safe
Yeah,
and the people within the community will not abandon you.
yeah,
They may chastise you, they may, hold you to rights, and being part of a community is not in any way social capital to do whatever the fuck you please,
here, here.
but it is a breach of trust and it is a breach of expectation
Yeah,
to not have that conversation.
yeah, agreed.
And it goes to show that they're both 16 at the time.
Yep,
Of
that
course, of
that makes a
course that
difference.
happens.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So I think the final thing we have time for is,
Viren, Terry, and Erebos.
yep.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
And Claudia. I forgot about Claudia
Well,
briefly. Oh no.
and let's, like, I think that's what's most fascinating to me is Claudia's, I don't, depending on when Claudia and Terry met,
Yeah.
Claudia has been like mostly alone for 2 years.
hmm
And we don't know precisely when Claudia and Terry met. I don't think.
I
Um,
don't think so either.
but depending on how long, that's like, even if it was like, let's half that time, Claudia was alone for a year.
Yeah.
Like, that does things to somebody if you've been around people all your life and that's not how you would choose to be. And we know that's not how Claudia would choose to be because she is so,
She's incredibly social.
and yeah, she is immensely social. She cares so much about family. And for her to be in that space for so long, that does something to your outlook on life, to your
hmm
everything that's going on.
Well, and to think like not to start every, Claudia fan fiction to come hereafter, but as you said, she was alone, but she wasn't just alone. She was alone with the corpse of her father,
Yeah. Oh God. Oh.
doing what she could to sustain it and keep it fresh, right? And starting to hear Erebos being like, these are ways we can help. These are ways we can do this, right? So, she has been alone for the better part of probably a year, say, I don't know. I'm just spitballing. I don't
Yeah.
actually know. Fans, do not take this as canon. Um, she's been alone for the better part of, year, 2 years, whoever knows, with the corpse of her father that she is keeping sustained through dark magic and a voice whispering in her ear. Wow.
like, come on, people.
Yeah,
It's no wonder she does what she does throughout
it
the.
is truly no wonder. And I
Yeah.
mean, bless Terry.
Here,
Bless
here.
Terry. I I I say this with full disclosure that when Aaron was like, my favorite character is Terry, I was like, who the fuck's Terry? This guy.
That's awesome.
And now that I've met Terry, I'm like, okay, yeah, 100%. He's everyone's cinnamon roll. Love him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I can't, like, I really hope that we learn more about how they met, because that's
Mhm.
just um the amount of mental gymnastics I'm doing to picture Claudia like in this just completely devastated state. And I think that's probably what it is. I think she's gotten to the point that she's just dissociated, right? Where she is no longer in her body and the emotions she feels are just so far away that that's how the only way it seems like she's able to operate. Um, and I imagine meeting someone in that state and then, all of a sudden just the wave of being seen that I imagine Terry created, that
Mhm.
just it makes sense because just of the way that they interact, how it makes sense that they're together.
Oh boy, does it. I
Right?
mean, it speaks to something you were saying earlier with regards to community being a place of safety. That
Yeah.
Claudia is for all her faults, Claudia is, generally a pretty lovely person
Yeah.
outside of her, newly discovered homicidal tendencies. But hey, it happens.
Well, I
Please.
so I should put a spoiler alert at the beginning of this podcast
Oh, yeah.
episode.
I mean, if you're listening to this, you've probably seen the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. I assume that you've seen all of the episodes.
I have.
And the idea of Terry being trans,
Yeah.
being the one who is able to be in relationship with Claudia amid so much trauma is fascinating to me,
Mm.
because what it really speaks to is that Terry has the capacity, the space, the compassion from his growing up that is almost like giving him a superpower to be able to live. And I'm not saying Claudia is unlovable. I'm saying that what she's doing is really difficult to be proximate to.
I get that. Yeah.
And it's really beautiful that what we see is part of the social bomb that helps Claudia be good is someone who is trans. And I just find that to be incredibly, like, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. Like, it's an
Yeah.
incredible, it's incredible.
I think something really beautiful kind of about that. And again, this is a future episode thing. I don't know if you have one with Ben scheduled, but you should. Um, Something that I think is really beautiful is that Terry knows who he is.
Yeah.
Terry has always known who he is. And Terry is allowed to live to the fullest of who he is, which I think is really beautiful. And I wish that we had that level of compassion at very least in the United States, as they
Yeah.
do in Catullus, where it's okay.
Yeah.
And I think what really something that I see when I see Terry and Claudia together is I see two people who accept each other, and two people who look out for each other and protect each other, but also two people who truly get each other.
Yes.
And I think that, Claudia had to grow up a lot in seasons 1 through 3.
Yep.
And she had to grow up even more in season, 3.5 before 4.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And I think something that really, really sits with me too, and it's just a dumb little background detail, but in that initial clip that was released of, Viren coming back to life,
Yep.
you can see a boot in the background.
Yep.
So Claudia's had to do some really unspeakable things.
Yeah. Yeah.
To sustain Viren and to sustain the Erebos pod.
Well, and thinking about, we spent a little bit of time talking about that when on that last final episode for season 3, and man, the line that she delivers, that is, I had to do unspeakable things. You can hear the grief in that line, and just I'm so in awe of the what space Raquel had to be in to have been in, right?
Yeah.
To have delivered that line that well, which is terrifying. But whew.
But on top of that too, I mean, kind of to bring this back to that point of community, I think Terry reminds her first off that she's not alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is probably the only reason she hasn't gone completely off her rocker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's funny that, an elf, humanity's long most hated enemy,
Yeah. Right.
is the true source of humanity in that group.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I forget if I talked about this recently on this podcast, or if it was in one of my small groups, but we talked about the difference between humanity and personhood.
Mm,
And I think what this show gives us is a stark view of the difference in that this idea of seeing the humanity in something, like for instance, seeing the humanity in bait or seeing the humanity in an elf, um, puts humans above in like a supremacist, like human supremacist mindset,
yep. Okay.
and instead thinking about the personhood that is within each being in this
Mm,
universe, right? The personhood of this elf, right, is showing us the personhood within us as
yeah.
humans, right? The personhood in Zim and Zubea and all of the elves is showing us and reflecting the person that is within us.
Mm,
But when we frame it in terms of humanity, what happens is it puts humanity above creation, the
interesting.
rest of creation, right?
Interesting.
Which is really fascinating to think about.
Yeah. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
I thought
very
it was cool
cool.
too when I when I
Yeah.
first came across that. It was a really neat conversation. Um, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna let the music come in and enter our listeners' ears. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back with our final couple of segments. Welcome back. Thanks for coming on back and joining us again. We have a couple more segments for you today. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our lens MVP. And again, reminding everyone, our lens today is community. So this is the character in this episode that has modeled community to the fullest. And so, for better or for worse, this character exemplifies the lens of community. So, Jesse, I'm going to throw it to you.
Sure.
Who would you like to nominate for this award?
I mean, I don't mean to sound a little full of myself here, but I think it should go to Soren.
All
Here's
right.
why. Here's my argument why. So he's coming back from one of the most traumatic experiences of his life.
Yep.
He is coming back from losing everything, his family, his father, his connection with his sister, his most important connection. And he has clearly come back into a place of being accepted by the community, loved by the community. He gives back to the community. He is a valued and trusted member of King Ezrin's council. He By accepting his new community and seeing beyond just the bonds of blood,
Yeah.
I think he's found a place where, he can do stupid drum rolls at the council meeting and it's cool. He can he can test his tight five against Zubea and people
Unreal.
love it for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I love this answer too, because I think a lot of times uh there's almost less value on comic relief, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
oh well, like we can deal without that. It's the drama that really matters. It's like the core, and it's almost like that comedy and humor and joy and laughter are often viewed as like superfluous rather than central to the core of what makes something beautiful. And I
Yeah,
think
well,
that
because we don't allow ourselves to do it.
exactly. And I think that's what you're kind of pointing to us towards the value of joy, the value of what Soren brings to the table. And I really love that. And I I'm gonna have to propose a nominee that will stomp Storin out, right? So,
Please.
um, I mean, let's be real. We spent a good deal of time talking about Ezrin and about community and how he's
Hmm.
intentionally building this community, right, in order to heal the wounds that have been happening for hundreds of years. And I gotta say, I think my boy Ezrin can take Soren here, and here's why. Again, we have this war that we've been working through. There's been 2 years. Soren clearly uh, does a lot, but Ezrin has been spearheading this, right? Ezrin has been working on creating this really lovely council that's really accommodating of so many different demographics. We have a lot of really cool things that he's doing with building community with the dragons and the elves and more. So I got to go with my boy Ez.
Fair enough.
Listeners, this is your chance. You have the opportunity to vote. We'll put a little poll going out on Twitter. So be on the lookout for that. And I can't wait to see what you all decide, whether Soren or Ezrin wins the award Lens MVP for community. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I will say that my running track record for winning is very low. So if you could vote for Ezrin just for me, that'd be great. Um, okay, and that kind of brings us into our final segment, and our final segment is gratitude. We on the podcast believe that joy is inextricably connected to gratitude, and in order to cultivate more of that, we like to end with a practice of that. And so, Jesse, I'm going to ask you, like, who is someone in this episode that you are grateful for, and why?
I mean, not to sound too much like a broken record, but especially coming back off of a period of uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, this desire to tell this really, really beautiful story. I am incredibly grateful for Soren here
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
I mean, like I've said, at this point, as of, November 2022, I've lived with this guy for 6 years. That's not an
yeah.
insignificant chunk of time, you know?
No,
And I have the show in many ways has been incredibly life-changing for me. Not just, financially, of course. It's, kept a roof over my head.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's also exposed me to so many different communities and people and uh, colleagues, new colleagues that I've never had the chance to work with before.
yeah,
And it's I know I must sound like a broken record sometimes with this, but I feel so grateful to be a part of the show.
mm-hmm.
And I feel so grateful to be a part of the show in Soren because he is he is relentlessly things that I wish that I was sometimes.
Yeah,
That is to say, relentlessly energetic, relentlessly positive, you know, relentlessly hopeful.
yeah. Mm, I love
And
that.
just coming back after so long and getting to work with everybody and now getting to see the fruits of our labor come to pass and seeing the people like it. I'm just like, oh,
Finally.
finally.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Oh, wow. Again, I'm constantly impressed. Like, just on social media alone, the amount of positivity exchanged among all of the cast, but not just the cast, like the entire team, really, like between the animators and the writers and Aaron and Justin. There's just so much like constant praise and gratitude passed along and in between you all that is really beautiful to watch.
Mhm.
And so I just am. It's really cool to hear how much it means to you, and so thank you for sharing. For me, I I found myself in this episode, and I've watched it like 4 or 5 times now.
Mhm.
Like, and I've been really interested in Callum in this episode because watching him go through, like, there's this, we see him in this pensive moment where he's like talking to the mirror And the way he talks to the mirror by himself is like very not what we're used to seeing Callum speak like. He speaks like in a very like his voice drops and he speaks more slowly, and it's a very different side of Callum to 2 seconds later when the guard knocks. He's like voice goes up, starts talking about very much more animated, gets a lot more of that awkward Callum that we're used to, and I think that we see how much Callum has changed and aged in just that one delivery of that one line. And it just made me think about how much I've grown in 2 years and what has changed for me in 2 years. And I just am really impressed that he can that he's as resilient as Soren, right? That he like the resilience of these characters is just really beautiful for me. So I'm gonna stick with Callum today.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of it reminds me so much of the final episode of BoJack Horseman, what you
Tell me
just
more.
said, where BoJack says, life shit and then you die. And Diane says, well, no, life is shit, but then you keep living.
Mm, yeah.
It is about resilience at the end of the day. But I think kind of to tie this back to what we've been saying, resilience doesn't need to be hard.
Mm. Oh, that's big.
Bruce Lee philosophy, be like water.
Yep.
If
Yeah.
you're strong and tough like an oak tree all the time, you're going to get knocked over by a storm.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I think that's what's so beautiful about community, and it's teaching us we don't have to be strong. We can lean on each other. That's why we're here. Oh, gosh. Okay, I think we could talk about this for forever.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I got more thoughts on Associate Crowlord. No, I'm good.
Yeah. We'll have a special mini episode on Associate Crowlord. Okay. Uh this has just been incredible, Jesse. Thank you for honoring all of us with your time and your willingness to talk about this on the podcast. It's really a gift. And so I just want to express my gratitude for more than just these characters, but also for you.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come on and talk. And thank you for giving me another platform for my radical pinko viewpoints.
Yeah, let's always. Okay, well, let's assume that there are some people who have no idea how to find you on social media. If you would like to be found, how would you like them to find you?
Well, I am at J Inocalla on all things. That's JINOCALLA. That's Twitter. I mean, if it's still around. That's Instagram for sure. That's Twitch. Don't add me there. Don't waste a sub on that. I don't stream. I don't use it. But yeah, and I mean, I always announce new things when I can talk about them. Also, my website, jesseinocalla.com. I typically keep that pretty updated as well. So yeah, reach out.
Fabulous. And of course, you all can find us at BNB_pod on all the things as well. We have a lovely Patreon that helps us pay our producer a living wage, which is what we're trying to do. So if you can spare a couple dollars a month, that would help. And if you can't, feel free to just give the podcast a little quick review. 5 stars appreciated. But whatever is floating your boat, we'd appreciate it. You
just 5 stars.
Yeah.
Five stars.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And leave a comment about how nice Ben is.
Yeah, specifically, right? Awesome. Okay, this has been another episode of the Dragon Pod. I guess it's the inaugural episode of the Dragon Pod, which is a subsidiary of Bending Not Breaking. Thank you all for being with us. Until next time, be well and do good.